cluster. Thank you for that. Share. I'm going to attempt to share my entire desktop. If someone can let me know if that is just unreasonable, because I do have a relatively large screen, but I'll try to bump the font size. Can I get a thumbs up from Jarv? Or a thumbs down if it's horrible? It looks good, Jarv? All right, so the work in progress for enabling auto deploy in k8s workloads is still ongoing. There's a few puzzle pieces that we're closing in on the ability to get together, but at least we have the ability to trigger an upgrade. So all we need to know is the environment, we need to know whether this is a dry run, and we need to know a specific image that we want to upgrade our sidekiq image to. In a future iteration, we'll be upgrading our Helm chart until some other work that we're waiting on to get into place is done. We're going to upgrade specifically the sidekiq image. So if I execute this fancy little trigger script that I've created, this is going to run a dry run on the pre-environment for the tag 1210 some date stamp, and this is some different image. There we go. So theoretically, the only change we're going to see in this dry run is the fact that we want to upgrade the sidekiq image being utilized in our pre-cluster.
Rebecca, a quick question. We're doing this for sidekiq, but it probably makes sense to do it for registry as well, right?
To keep scope limited, I'm limiting this to sidekiq only because that's what we're concentrating on. The registry, if we get auto deploy working properly in general, as meaning that we get our Helm tags update or our Helm images updated with the appropriate information, we'll be able to auto deploy registry at the same time we enable the auto deploy of our Helm charts.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. I guess we'll just wait, do what we're doing now for registry until the
Yeah.
auto deploy stuff's finished.
Yeah. So as we could see in our diff, the sidekiq container we're running a horrendously old version for some reason, 12.6 stable EE, and we're going to update that to 12.10, what I specified. So I saw something else. Oh, that was the dependencies container getting the same image name. And that's the only thing in our diff. So I'm confident that theoretically this will work precisely the way we want it to. So the only thing I really need to change, and this is the precise stuff that we'll be setting in our trigger when we get to the point of updating deployers appropriately. So here, I'll just save my little script, which is just mimicking what a job would do inside of deployer. And this will actually trigger a writable change to the pre-cluster. So the dry run will still run in this case because we want to see if there's any problems with the dry run. We want to make sure we catch that prior to actually performing a deploy. So the dry run will, in this case, output the same exact information that it did in the last run I just showed you, and then it'll move forward into producing the actual change in the pre-cluster.
And this, I guess this image tag is a bit earlier than the last deployment we had to pre-prod, otherwise it wouldn't work.
I plucked this from the latest at the time that I was looking at it. It might be out of date because this was something I pulled late yesterday when I was testing things.
Great.
26. What's today's date? The 20. Yeah, so this is an image from yesterday, but still newer than what's currently running in our environment. So if I could remove that, I could reveal our values because they're not going to show anything special, but you can see that we're pulling in yesterday's image. We're operating on the pre-environment. We set dry run to false. Dry run false is very important because that controls a few things. One, the building of this proper pipeline, and two, we want to make sure that we're going to pull credentials that are not read-only. So we're using our writable service key instead of our read-only service key. But our diff shows the same thing. We're going to update our image. That's the only change for both the sidekiq and the dependencies container. And we see down here the upgrade actually started. And now we're waiting for that deployment to be ready. And I could sit here and do a watch cube control get pods l app equals sidekiq. Because this is pre, I have access to this cluster locally. Albeit only
While
slow.
we're waiting for this start
Perfect.
back,
The image
are
came in
we
quick.
are we? Oh, it doesn't look good.
Nope.
Did you check this image before?
I did not check before this demo, no. But I could check it now. Theoretically, this would be where, okay, so this is an image that does not exist for X reason. So I'd have to investigate why. For the purpose of the demo, let me see if I can find another image that might work. Let me look at latest.
You can check out distribution channel, right? There are tags posted there.
We don't get success messages in the distribution channel, only failures.
Good point.
So I'm just gonna
Also, also be careful because pre-prod was deployed to yesterday, and we can't take an image that's more recent than yesterday.
Well, that's unfortunate. Okay, this is getting in my way. Okay, I'm not finding any images available at this point. Which one did I initially try? It ended in 694D.
You can already see that we'll have to spend quite a lot of time on improving the visibility and also alerting for all of the
Image
projects
builds.
that are related. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I found an image that does theoretically work. So this deployment, we upped our timeout for the deployments to 15 whopping minutes, which is very unfortunate because this will take forever to fail. I don't want to wait for the entire demo for this to fail. Let me copy and paste this. So I'm just going to manually intervene this because this is the demo and I don't want to deal with this. So I've got the updated image. So dry runs do not tell us that an image does or does not exist, but theoretically, when we've got a pre-job created, it's should be already in our pipeline where it's going to check to validate that we have our images available to us. We might need a jar. We might want to consider, instead of just checking that the tag exists and the pipeline was successful, we might want to actually reach out to the Docker registry and validate our images are available to us, because we're not doing that
Yeah,
yet.
I thought about that. I guess I guess one, that this is supposed to be temporary.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if we want to spend too much time. And then two, I was thinking like, well, what would we check? Because we would check like all the images. But then again, we're doing sidekiq now, so maybe we could just check for
Yeah,
that.
the only one we care about right now is sidekiqs. So
yeah, I mean, it does
it's a safe
help
start at least.
it does make this a bit simpler because then we don't have to figure out the tag format for the pipeline check, which is a different format than the image. So that would make things a bit simpler, I guess. I'm a little bit worried that this image that we're going to test with next might be, like more recent than what's on pre-prod because it was yesterday, but
The image I
yeah, I don't
found
know.
is older,
It's the,
1700, 1709 from
yeah,
yesterday.
okay. I guess we'll see. I put an even older one in the Zoom chat if you want another one.
But that's only important, Jar, if something actually changed on the import side of things, right? Sorry, export side of
It's,
things.
no, it's important if any where we've had problems is with the database schema. If the database schema is more
Right.
recent than what's on the database, then
Yep.
it'll fail the. So we just have to be careful about that.
Good point. Sorry, I keep forgetting about that. You already told me that once.
Yeah. Skarbek, what would you think about also doing this in staging and parallel?
I can, yeah. So all we need to do for that particular case is modify this pre and set it to the GSTG. And I could run another trigger. I'll create a new tab. So my middle window here is pointed to the pre-environment, which is trying to roll out a deployment. And then I've never seen the mobile version of our website. This is scaring me. Running. And this should be, yeah, this is staging. So we got the dry run followed by our actual deploy. So this looks better. Looking at my console, it's trying to roll out in pre, and we reached the init stage on the second dependencies or the second init container. So we're doing good with this image. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's good.
So my right window here is showing the staging upgrade.
Just thinking ahead for this demo, if we're going to do this in production, are we going to set the queue configuration or not before we do it?
All we discussed was just changing the image, the upgrade, not necessarily changing our queue configuration. So I'd prefer not to until we have an appropriate change request in place and that SRE on calls.
Okay.
Well,
So this is just going to be the null queue then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so looking at the stage def, we see that we're upgrading from an image that came from the 23rd of March, and we're upgrading it to the 26th. And that's the only change I see in this diff output. So we'll just watch that upgrade go out. Did they take so long? It's been nearly 3 minutes and we're still in the init phase.
Yeah.
Whoops. That's what I get when I can't see what I'm typing because of Zoom. Staging is a much better test because there's so many more pods running in that environment. The pods finish initting in staging faster than they do in the pre-environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising given how the pre-environment's configured. We're also using Cloud SQL, right? So I don't know. Like, there's probably things are just slow in pre-prod.
Yeah, like staging, we've already got at least one ready pod. And here we're still in the init phase. But at least the deployments are moving forward, which is precisely what we wanted to see. So I guess it would be fun to know how this operates on the back end, because right now we're only setting the image tag. We're passing image tag into our trigger as a variable. If we do not send an image tag into a pipeline, um, instead of having some awkward default, our Helm file is configured to poll the cluster to figure out what version of the sidekiq image is running. That way, if we ever need to make a configuration change, which will not contain an image tag environmental variable, it'll automatically not change. It'll automatically populate our Helm template with the appropriate sidekiq image. That way we don't accidentally change the image value unnecessarily. Which is the same approach we plan on using for the chart version when we get that ready to go. All right, so the staging deployment completed. So we now have our brand new updated image that was performed via a trigger. That was like watching paint dry. Do we want to do one into production? I'm gonna stop watching pre because it's never gonna finish today. All right, so to do production, all we need to do is change our environment to gprod. And I'll go ahead trigger that. And I'll log into that server just so we could monitor that from that side of things. We only have one pod running, which is to be expected. So this deployment should happen a lot faster. So looking at the diff, we see that we're going from an image from the 13th upgrading it to one from the 26 for both containers. Let's see, config map change. What's that? Jarb, do you know anything about external diffs being updated in production at all?
Definitely not, and they shouldn't be updated in production.
Well, according to what I'm seeing, we enabled it.
Yeah, I would say we need to hold off before making this change then. We did enable it, so there was a problem where it wasn't enabled in staging, right? And that was causing us problems. So we did the Helm file update to source the enable flag from Chef. So I would expect this to be false, not true.
Okay.
Granted, of course, this is not going to cause any problems, right? If we applied it, because it like doesn't have any effect on anything that's running. But I would say we probably shouldn't apply it.
Well, it's already going out.
Oh, I thought. Sorry, I was had another screen open. You're already applying this on. I see, because we didn't review the diff. I guess that's. Yeah.
And production
Sorry,
is
guys,
now
I disappeared a
updated.
tiny bit.
What's that?
Sorry, I disappeared a tiny bit.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, well, the production, all clusters except for pre are now updated with a version of an image. So we've got a few things we need to look into. One is improvements into validating that our images are being built properly, because the last two that should have been built are not available for X reason, so we need to figure out why that is. Maybe an improvement to our pipeline to check the registry that the image is available. And then on the side, we need to figure out what's going on with the enablement of diffs, since that change was unexpected. But that concludes what I was attempting to demo today.
So the diff change actually went to production, right? Or at least it's going to production right now.
From what I could see, yes, but I don't know
Yeah,
anything about that.
I mean, yeah, the change was made in production, but it doesn't have any effect because we don't have DQ. We're not using sidekiq product export in production.
Yeah.
The important part is that we had a configuration change made to Chef that was not reflected to Kubernetes. This is something that I'm documenting today. I've wrote up a document that I'm about to submit in a merge request for, but we don't have any way of saying, hey, dear person who's making this configuration change, this impacts Kubernetes. Please make sure that we get a pipeline configured to apply that change to our Kubernetes environments as well. That's still a missing piece that we need to resolve.
I almost think, Starbuck, that like principle of least astonishment here would say that like when we do this triggered pipeline, that the only thing that should change is the version and nothing else. And I'm not sure if there's something we can do to validate that, but maybe we could even inspect the diff in the pipeline to say like, hey, did anything else change? If so, I'm going to exit, and you can make that change outside of this, but let's not do it now, kind of thing.
I noted that as an action item because I agree with that as well.
I just don't know. I mean, like, I don't know how to do this elegantly, though. It's going to be.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
if I
really
recall, there's a way
elegantly. I'm interested in safe. So whatever,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, I know. Well.
I'll see if maybe Helm diff has options for outputting data that might make sense to help us out here.
Well, no, actually, like, I think all we would need to do, right, is an extra, like, one diff before updating the image. right?
Well, in this
You run
particular
it.
case, sidekiq has two diffs. There's going to be one for the sidekiq container and one for the dependencies container. So you'll see two diffs in this change.
No, what I'm saying is that we first do a diff with the image version set to what it is in the cluster without overriding it, right? We
Yeah.
do a diff, and that should be like nothing. Nothing has changed, right? And
Oh, I
then
see
we
what you're
apply,
saying.
and then we do the second diff, which is with the image changed, and the apply with the image change. So the first diff is like nothing, and then the second diff would give us the image change.
Yep. Yep. I see what you're saying.
I forgot the name of the project. There was a project for testing Helm, as in something like RSpec, but for Helm. Might be worth seeing whether that would help us out here, because it was working on the same principle, and you could actually write tests against the tool. Was it Helm? No, I can't remember the name. It might be worth looking into something like that. If
I noted that as an
if
action
it would be a
item.
quick, yeah.
Yeah. That would be a good idea as well. Anything else? Jarb, you want to take it away with the VPA stuff?
Sure. So we did a lot of work this week on like performance monitoring, adding, we now have a large project added to the load generator. So that's giving us a bit more data. And what I wanted to do is discuss the VPA results. I can share my screen. If I can find my window, here it is. So we've enabled the vertical pod autoscaler. This is not something we're going to turn on. In other words, we're not going to enable VPA to adjust the pod resource requests and limits automatically, because it's not something you want to do with HPA enabled, which is something we have enabled. But it does give us some recommendations on what what the VPA thinks is a good, what are good limits for limits and requests. So I think we'll start with staging. Staging is only interesting for sidekiq export because that's where we have load generated. I don't think there's anything here that is too surprising. So these terms, lower bound, target, uncapped target, and upper bound, I define them up here. I don't think I like 100% understand what they are, but this is kind of like the high level explanation. Note that these aren't limits, but for requests. And so this isn't like recommending what the limit should be, but the request. And the request is like the amount that's reserved for the pod when it gets provisioned on the cluster. So I guess what we want to compare is what are the requests that we have now and what is it recommending? You can see that these are the requests for CPU and memory. Interestingly, for sidekiq, you can see that it's actually thinking that we should have much higher requests. And I think this makes sense. Skarbek, maybe you can like chime in here, but I think what it's telling us is that our requests are too low, and that kind of makes sense because they are pretty low as they are now, right?
Yeah, we just took what we thought came out of our virtual machines and kind of applied a best guess scenario. We didn't really have any load in a pod to look at for this, so.
Yeah, so I think it's even more interesting for a registry. So the problem we're trying to solve, or what this issue is about, is the fact that we're getting a lot of evicted pods in production, and it appears to be that the node is just running out of memory. It's not that we're hitting the memory limit for the pod, we're hitting the memory limit for the node. So what that likely means is that we're jamming too many pods on a single node, and then eventually the memory starts to increase on each of the pods, and then we run out of memory on the node, and then the pod gets evicted and it gets put onto another node. I think this definitely points to our request being too low, right? Because if the requests were higher, then it wouldn't try to jam so many pods onto a single node. And that's what the recommendation says here. So where we have like a request CPU of 50, this is saying like we want it in the hundreds. So I think, to me, the upshot of this is like our request limit is probably too low for registry, and we want to increase it. What do you think, Skarbek?
I would agree. I've always found it kind of surprising that we're only running 3 nodes in production. Considering we had 4 nodes that was processing all of the registry traffic prior. But
So yeah, I guess what's going to happen is that when we increase the requests, it's possible that
we'll probably scale up a node.
Yeah, so I guess so let's look at the memory here. This is really hard because like you don't have units, it's in bytes. So it looks like it's saying that, hey, like this upper bound is 1 gigabyte. This lower bound, this uncapped target is 600 megabytes. So uncapped target, recommended memory requests without taking restrictions account. So this is like really low then. Like I would say like we probably need to bump the requests up for both CPU and memory quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the request was just an idle. We took what was considered an idle pod into place here.
Yeah.
So we only needed 32 megabytes for a pod that does 0 work, but that's not the case in GitLab.com. We're always going to be doing work in this case.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can just imagine, like you start like adding a bunch of idle pods and then they start receiving traffic and the memory grows on each of them and then boom, you run out of memory on the node.
Blow up the node. Yeah.
Yeah. So I suggest we increase this slowly. Like we start by maybe like CPU of 100, memory of like maybe 150, and do it in increments.
That's the safest
Sorry, Jarv, but doesn't that mean that we're going to be having to do this like in 50 increments? Because the step you're mentioning here is quite low compared to what we are seeing actually being measured.
Yeah, so I kind of want to take a small step first, just to like make sure that we aren't there's like some assumption that we're missing here, something. I like to take like a baby step first and then kind of look at the behavior of the cluster and then decide what to do next. Because what we want to avoid is not having the node capacity, because it takes time to scale up and end up with something that affects the service.
Production traffic, okay. And how much time does it take for the cluster to scale up a node?
It's pretty quick. I mean, to be honest, I think it's on like less than 5 minutes. It's like probably like 2 minutes,
almost
maybe.
The amount of time that we take to start cycle.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It's fast. I just like, this is something fundamental, so I like to just be a little bit cautious, and it's not like it's easy to change, right? I would say let's creep it up slowly first, and then kind of see, and then
this will also be a good exercise at just learning how GKE reacts when we make changes like this too. This will be a good learning exercise.
Yeah.
Cool. You have my support in that then. I would have been less conservative most likely, but I understand why you would want to do it this way. So time-wise,
yeah.
Like when do we want to focus on this as well?
I think we could do this, like I'll do the first bump today, and we can let it go over the weekend, and then like I would say Monday we can bump it again. I'll say like we'll go to 50 to 100, and then 100 to 200.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. What else did I have? Oh yeah, I wanted to just kind of go over a plan for the production rollout. and whether this is a realistic goal for next Friday. I think
wonder
it's
if
realistic.
I think it is realistic, but I think we
Yes.
should probably reevaluate with the action items we came across today, because I don't
Yeah.
want to introduce a problem where we're starting to block our deployments because Kubernetes still has things that we need to improve. Because if we
Yeah.
fail to
I
roll out
mean,
a deployment to sidekiq, that's going to prevent post-deploy migrations, and I don't want to get into that situation.
in all honesty, like we are so slow to deploy these days. Like this week has been horrendous when it comes to that we could have theoretically run this in production for a whole week without being affected.
Yeah, I know. It's like we could just have like a Slack notification to Slack Skarbek and myself every time there's a deploy, and then we would just do this manually. Like it's not, and that wouldn't be a whole lot of interrupts for us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So my vote is to like let's target to have this all the moving parts working by Friday. Like I think there's nothing in here like from the action items. I think it's pretty simple. We're very close to this deployer update to trigger the pipeline. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
How do you feel? Do you feel okay about that, Skarbek, or not? Like,
oh yeah, I'll take the
Yeah.
action item to create the necessary change request to get this rolling, and create a proposal, I guess, because I think what we should do is maybe roll out 4 pods and maybe knock off 1 exporter node. That way we're starting to chip off our VMs. Do we want to go that direction, or do we just, I fear adding capacity is going to stress out Redis and Postgres.
I see.
I'll put together a plan of action. We'll put the conversation in there. How about that?
Are you sure that's going to be? I mean, like we already ran in production for a while, like days,
True.
right? And
Yeah.
we had a bunch of
That
pods
was
running.
over a weekend when there was less stress on the overall infrastructure. I don't know where we are in terms of capacity for Redis and Postgres, and I know we've had a few incidents in the last few weeks regarding precisely that, specifically for Redis. So
we have capacity now in Redis to be able to actually add this. That's we bought enough of that just in this week's work. The scalability did, but didn't we already have a production change issue? I mean, I remember referencing it yesterday.
Yeah, so I opened up a production change issue for the demo today, but we ended up not being ready to do this live, so it wasn't necessary.
No,
in other words,
fine. What I'm trying to saying is, can we repurpose this one and just move on with it?
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
Just a quick review of what's left in the epic. I think pretty much everything is actively being worked on. Done. And this one has a doc. Yeah, so everything is assigned right now. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. And also, I just felt like with Redis and Postgres, like the nature of project export, it's just like I just don't think it's putting a lot of load on it. It's very bursty. I think we'll probably be okay.
I guess my concern is that they're holding connections open, and I think for Redis we've exhausted the capability to have existing connections. But Marin, it sounds like you made it sound like we have
this is the
progress.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I'm not too worried.
Let's do it then.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I think.
Can we then? I mean, can we discuss the actual then checkpoints during the week?
Yeah,
so, like this is really easy for things to creep into the scope. So, how about we roll out on Monday? We roll out the change to production, so that we can start taking the traffic.
Okay.
And then have a task until Wednesday to manually bump sidekiq if we don't have this done by then. When I say this, I mean the connection.
Sidekiq image.
Yeah.
I think like given that we have to look into this MR diff thing still, I would say like Monday we draft the change issue, or at least have a final version of it, and then Tuesday we plan for the deployment.
Okay. That's also fine, as long as it doesn't expand far beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember something really silly that you both would probably kill me for it, but like I'm even more inclined to say that instead of having a reminder to deploy manually, we would add a schedule pipeline that will check and trigger manually.
Oh God.
I'm relatively hopeful that we'll be able to complete the work that I was struggling to get done for this morning. I'm hoping we can complete that early next week.
Okay.
If anything, what we could do is just set the jobs that do the triggers to allow failure being true. That way we're not blocking the pipeline, but we could, outside of the deploy, investigate why sidekiq is failing to deploy. That alone will get us some information as well, and we can make improvements in parallel to running this stuff into production.
Okay. So just to make it clear, like why I'm pushing you guys so much on this is, I already explained last week, but this week I want to talk about the tooling challenges that we are seeing. Like apart from us wanting to see like the real production traffic and inform our decisions further from that, I don't want to go into like too much of prettifying how things look, because like I told you, Scarbeck, I don't want us to go and over optimize this solution when I'm planning to carve out some time for us to remove this deployer k8s workloads connection, right? Like we want to get the release tools to be the coordinator here, right? Like I'm not arguing with that whatsoever. I'm just trying to get us to a point where we will have some time to actually focus on it. And this is where we would want to have like various notifications, safe gates, and so on. Because ultimately, even with this custom tooling, if we do have a failure, it's going to be on a very low impact queue. We have alerting for it, right? Like we can immediately, like we can leave a change issue open or something open, and then just have the SREs on call be aware, hey, this is where you go when you see this alert. This is what you need to do to scale down so that production can continue as normal, right? And I kind of expect that in the full week, we won't have a problem, but obviously I don't know, like I'm not psychic. So then that will allow us to actually focus on getting the tooling better and getting the diffs to fail, right, when we see something else, and so on and so on. It feels like a second level improvement rather than the first level improvement.
I completely agree.
Cool. All right. Great work, folks. Again, like yet another week where I'm super happy with the progress we are making. So thanks for pushing really hard on this. I really do appreciate it.
Cool. Manage, before you go, I just wanted to sync up on the deploy. So we're kind of stuck on production now, and like, I'm not sure what the next step is. I don't know.